G'day, it is the coach here, and we are having a cruel summer now that you're gone. Hopefully, I'm like one of the only old people who actually remember that Banana Rama song. It's like my Kruleboyz song. If you don't know it, go check out the best of the 80s, Cruel Summer. Actually, you probably know it from the Karate Kid. It was like a big song. Anyway, we're not here talking Karate Kid. We are talking all things Orruk Warclans, specifically the Kruleboyz. And I'm here joined by Ellis, or Ellis the Menace, he likes to be called, but Ellis Priestley, who has done pretty well with Kruleboyz, even though they have only been out for a couple of months, and they've only really been legal match play for a month or two after the FAQ. But Ellis, you have been doing really well. You went 5-0 at Sheffield Slaughter. You came second. You went 5-0 at Element Games Grand Slam. So you clearly know what you're doing with these Kruleboyz. And it's also like 11 o'clock at night for this guy in England. So mad props to this this scouser.
No, thanks for having me on. I am excited to talk Kruleboyz. I will caveat that the 5-0s were with completely different factions, but because obviously there was, but I did go 4-1 the last big event with Kruleboyz. So they kind of on my rapid sheet. I have gone 5-0 a couple of tournaments, but my best with Kruleboyz is currently 4-1.
That's still a pretty good score. So like 4-1, 5-0. A lot of the time it's skill and a little bit of luck along the way. But we're talking Kruleboyz, and so people who have been following my channel for a while now know Gary P's being smart. Shut up, Gary. God damn it, Gary. So like this book hasn't been out for very long. People know that I've been in lockdown for a long time. I'm free, which is great, but I haven't had a chance to play against the Kruleboyz yet in real life. And I think a lot of people, at least in my community, are building up and painting their models and waiting for it to look really nice until they actually hit it on the table. So I'm really curious to learn from you, because what I've seen on the tournament scene, I don't know if it's my perception or if it's just, there's one particular build and it appears that just seems to be like this one narrow corridor that Kruleboyz seems to be fitting in right now competitively. So I really want to learn from you. What have you learned along the way? What have you tested? What do you like? What are some of the secret list tech that people aren't talking about? I think that's kind of what I would love to have a chat with you, Ellis, about. But like before we get started, mate, what got you into Kruleboyz, and like what do you want to tell us about you, the legend?
So the main thing that got me in the Kruleboyz, and to my shame, is a model that I like, but I'm not actually including my army anymore, just due to my competitive nature, and that's the Vulture. Not the Gobsprak. I saw that model and I was like, I'm playing them. That's what it is. I'm playing those guys. I'm using that Vulture. I played about 10 games with the Vulture and they went, I'm not using the Vulture, but
all right, hold on to that. Hold on to that, because I did actually want to talk to you about that, because that was like my first perception. People were like, "These Vulture's great, it's sick." I was all about the wizard Vulture over the leader Vulture, but no one's running him. No one's running it. So I do want to ask you about that a little bit later, when we start drilling in. But you got drawn in by the Vulture.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things, other than models wise, was the rules. So those sneaky tactics, when they first talked about the dirty tactics, I was like, if I just get to at the start of a game, say, hold on, I've got my dirty tactics to do. My nickname being the Menace, doing dirty tactics, I was like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I've got to do that, and they're so cool. And just that minute or so where your opponent's looking at you in the face, and you're just looking like, which tactic am I? Which thing am I going to get you with? They're only tiny, but sometimes those tiny little things can just make an army or make a game sometimes. And that was a big drive. Once I saw those rules as well, I was like, I'm playing that.
I always found them really interesting because they are a completely different aesthetic to the Orruk, or the Iron Jaws.
Yeah.
You look specifically at like the Bone Splitters and the Iron Jaws, and they're very like World of Warcraft cartoony, you know, they're not as gritty, and they're not as like, I'm going to call it Lord of the Rings aesthetic, right? It's a much more grimy, gritty Orruk. And when you look at them too, like they don't complement each other because they're just very different styles. And I really liked, and really, I'm trying to think how I better articulate myself. I just really liked the different aesthetic. I like that they haven't done just like swampy Iron Jaws. They've done something completely different.
Yeah, it's somewhat, there's something new, and I mean, I'm not the best of painters, but War in the Heartlands, there was three Kruleboyz guys there, and we all had different lists, same premises, but just the shape of the army. You've got big birds, you've got swamp monsters, you've got little guys, you've got littler guys, you've got your archers at the back, you've got your wizards. The shape of the army just looks cool on a table. It feels cool to play with, but they are different to anything that... They're a different orc. You wouldn't think of swamp dwelling orcs. You'd probably think swamp dwelling goblins or like weird cave creatures, but orcs, and then riding these weird like swamp beasts, and then using poisons and using the swamps inside the game to buff and elixirs and stuff. They are World of Warcraft. They're very, very World of Warcraft, I think.
Really feels like, and you know, Dragonoid saying before, Dragon Inti, well, Dragon, you are Dragon. I'm terrible with names. They feel like they do feel hobgoblin-y. I remember hobgoblins back in fantasy battles, you know, the combination of the chaos dwarves and the hobgoblins, and they were always like a little side feature. They were never the primary feature of the chaos dwarves, but they do. I really like the poison elixirs. I like the griminess. I love, like, I was actually playing with the vulture yesterday. I was with one of my mates, and we were like converting up one of the birds to be a bit more dark elfy, just for a conversion piece. And just like the tree and like the way it's kind of sitting on the piece, and, you know, looking at even Dobby, the, you know, everyone's favorite ally in instruction right now. They're definitely a very cool piece. And like, you know, a lot of the chat saying, you know, absolutely loving, you know, the Snatcher boss, you know, it's a very interesting style. I don't want to harp on this too much, but, you know, I think they bring something completely different. You either love them or you hate them. You got something, whether you are an Iron Jaws folk or a Kruleboyz, or you like them both. Maybe you are an orc aficionado.
Yeah, and the names as well. They've got some such cool names, like the Swamp Boss and the just like the basic Bolt Boys. Like, they could have come up with some random name, but they're like, no, we just go full orc on this. They're called Bolt Boys. What have they got? They've got a bolt thrower. The boys, Bolt Boys.
And the trogs are great too. I think it brings something a little bit different as well. I really like the trog. It feels like it's half orc, half goblin, but then they've got this little unique piece in the middle. But overall, the aesthetics are great, and it's good to see that they are competitive as well. Especially, look, Big Yellers. Big Yellers seems like the list that everyone just keeps talking about. So I want to narrow in a little bit on the list design and because I know you've play tested all three of the sub allegiances. I know you've been playing around and you've been cutting and changing lists, and, you know, you've been trying to explore the book. And I think I really want to understand from you, like, the play style and what you've learnt along the way. So let's talk about those three things, right? You know, you've got your Big Yellers, your Grinning Blades, and your Skullbugs.
Yeah.
How have you found all three of those sub-allegiances, and are they all equal?
Well, they're definitely not equal. I think Skullbugs is a non-starter, just to be in with. It's a very niche thing. I mean, it's when an enemy is picked to fight within 3, if they're a monster, on a 2 it protects on mortal wounds. It's on a 6+, they get -1 to hit. It's that one, yeah. 6+, they get -1 to hit. If they're a monster, it's +2. It's you do roll for every enemy unit, so it's cool. But in an age where Iron Jaws exist, where 3 of their units can get +1 to hit, anything else in the game. So let's say you do roll a 6, you do roll a 4 up against a monster. They just spend a command point, and you've took a full sub allegiance to do nothing. That it's such a shame that it is like you look at it. I tried it in one game, and I was like, I don't really have a sub allegiance here. I'm just taking it for no reason. The The Grinning Blades, they're a very, very interesting one. And we were talking about just before we jumped on that their problem with them is they're an army that's gonna give away first turn, knowing that if you screen correctly, nobody's getting near your bolt boys or even your snatcher bosses on the Sludrakers or your vultures, which are very, very squishy. Because ultimately, the army, like one of its major weaknesses is for 4-up saves the best you're going to get, and that's on your big guy that you probably wanted a 3-up save on. Most of the things are 5-up, if not 6-up, and you set so far back away from your front screen, which your screen's generally, and I'll get into this. One of the best units in the book is not in the book, and that's the shooters from. It's the shooters, but there's some secret tech in those shooters, and there's a lot of overlapping buffs with the shooters, with your sneaky tricks, with some of your command traits as well. I'll get into them because it's pretty cool when you pull them off, and someone's like, "Oh, that's a thing." So yeah, it's like this is what my shooters are there to do. But the Grinning Blades is an interesting one. It's for people that don't know, you can't be targeted on turn 1 if you're more than 12 inches away. So the premise is you screen well, give away first turn, try go 1/2 drops. It's very hard for this book to be a 1-drop. I'll caveat that. It's very, very, very hard. I actually think it's almost impossible for this book to be a 1-drop, just because the way the points work out.
You're just giving away too much if you go 1 drop.
Yeah, way too much. I do think two drops good double battalion. You can go 4-drop obviously and take the Warlord battalion and get an extra artifact. There's not many crazy artifacts in. There's some very niche ones for playing against some of the bigger counters in this book, which is like shooting Lumineth and Seraphon. But yeah, going back to Grinning Blades with a 12-inch away on turn 1. If that was just like a 12-inch and then an 18 and a 24, if it just degraded, like the mist was fading, it was I'd probably play that 90% of the times. I mean, yeah.
And Gary, I just want to pause for a second because Gary makes, I think, 2 really interesting points as well that I'd love your thoughts on. One is the fact that your big yellers are the only ones that unlock a battle line if. Yep. So the fact that you go from 1 battle line in Grinning Blades and Skullbugs to having 2 option of within your big yellers, I think is a big benefit. And then the other thing that Gary mentioned, which I also think is valuable, is the fact that even though your Grinning Blades aren't visible to enemy units, things like Sentinels ignore line of sight, so they don't care. So you lose an allegiance, and you're building around something that if an opponent doesn't have a lot of shooting and they are a melee army, you kind of almost give away that ability. And then the 3 armies that are terrorizing in the shooting meta right now, one of them ignores you.
Yeah. And it's I'll get onto that, but it is why, and I think that everybody's going big yellers. Big yellers give you the extra range, give you that 1 reroll sometimes. I mean, I don't really ever forget it, but yeah, Gary's pointed out the rogue idol. I did try that, but you just give away too much. You get rid of too many screens because you want your 2 units of bolt boys, so it's a lose-lose, that one. But yeah, going back to the sub factions, the book just pushes you into big yellers. Even if big yellers was blank and just said bolt boys are battle line, still think it's better than anything else you're going to take, because the book steers you into bolt boys, and then that's benefiting what the book is trying to push you into. But Grinning Blades, it could have been something cool. I think the lack of anything else being battle line isn't down to, it's just the lack of units. Like, there's only 3 units that can be battle line. One of them is battle line if, one of them is already battle line, and another one is hobgoblins that are in this book, I think. I guess.
I don't see a lot of people talking about the other goblins that aren't Potgrot. I think people are obsessed with Potgrot. It's like you have the pantheon of like Potgrot, Krabnos, and like a few other kind of funny little things. But Yeah, not a lot of goblin talk, and I guess it kind of we'll talk a bit about some of your list tech down the line. Just my thoughts as well. I know when I was initially looking at the book, I thought I think Big Yellows was definitely at the top. I thought Grinning Blades had some play, but I think you're right. I think the gap between first and second from Big Yellows to Grinning Blades is just too big. And when I look at Big Yellows, and I can see that, you get three big things, right? You get the +3 inches on the range characteristic of missile weapons, and your missile weapons are good. You're not like me in my Gloomspite Gits where my shooting is trash. +3 inches is pretty good. And with the smaller board sizes, I get more options to shoot at. I get to get the battle line option, so it gives me more flexibility. I can double reinforce those, where outside of them, I can only reinforce them once. And then the last thing is I get the reroll ones to hit in the first battle round. So, especially if I go like the big long, what is it, the Beast Killer bows or whatever.
Yeah, with its one shot. Yeah.
Like if I can reroll ones and throw like an all-out attack onto it, like you're laughing.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's it's hard to get away from them, right? It's very hard to put up a fight for the other two. And I've tried, and I did try as soon as I got the book, I tried it because I knew ultimately I'd default to Big Yellow. So my first ever game with Kruleboyz, I used the Skullbugs and I didn't get past turn 2 or 3, but obviously first game, and I play against my practice partner plays Marathi and the Bow Snakes. So I'm ripping out an army that's just come out with very, very minimal units, and he's got Marathi Bow Snakes, so it didn't last well. But yeah, it's a shame, but it does give me hope for new ways to play if they ever do a Kruleboyz Part 2. But the army is Big Yellows, and
maybe it's a White Dwarf expansion. And Gary, yes, you've got me. Actually, I just reread it. This is why having a battle time in front of me, a guest, and a live chat can often be distracting. So I apologize. It is reroll one of the hits, not reroll one. So still, with that one shot, it's a bit more consistency if you need it.
Yeah, it's good on like your unit as well of Bolt Boys turn 1. If you're over the 20-inch threat range of moving and shooting, double shooting, a unit of 9 fires 10 shots hitting on 2s, you're going to get 1 or 2 misses. You get to reroll one of those. It's the only reroll in the entire book. There is no other ways to reroll dice, so you might reroll those into some more mortal wounds. Like it's, but I always do reroll 1 dice because it's not just a miss; it's reroll our dice. So anything that's not a mortal wound, if it's a 2 or 3 or 4, you might as well re-roll it for the chance. It's a very low chance it's going to roll a 1, but if it hits a 5 or a 6, it's value. And that's just some extra that a lot of people playing will probably forget about. And that's an extra thing on top of battle line, the extra range. It's just everything points at Big Yellows and everything comes home Big Yellows.
So if let's narrow down, if people want to play Grinning Blades or Skullbugs, cool. We're not saying not to do it. You do you. I think what we're talking now is that for the people who are looking for the most competitive builds, they want to do their best at their next local tournament or maybe optimize their list. Big Yellows are probably the way to go. They're certainly the strongest build or the most obvious build. Maybe over time, something like Grinning Blades or Skullbugs will find its place. But I want to kind of narrow down a little bit. What's the play style of Orruk Warclans? Are you finding you are building around monsters and heroes? Are you building around shooting, combat? Are you castling up? Are you spreading out? Are you coming in from reserve? How do you think about the army and then build around that?
So when I first started testing and I building a list, I'd come off the back of playing triple Great Unclean One, 2 units of 10 Plague Bearers, Nurgle. So I was in that mindset of, well, I need monsters. It's a monster edition. Let's start off Vulture, Swamp Boss on Swamp Boss on Sludge Raker. See where I go from there. Every time I talk and I explain something, is with the caveat of in the list there's 2 units of 9 Bolt Boys. So when I'm explaining, so there's always 2 units of 9, I did try 4 units of 6, but because of Battle Shock, like how bad Battle Shock is in this army, something like a Rain of Stars, anything that was Mortal Wounds, AoE, hitting those guys, just killing 1 or 2, you could kill 1, pop a 6 on your Battle Shock, and you've lost half the unit. So it very, very quickly went into 2 9-man units, or a 9 and a 6 if you don't want to go as heavy. It's you can go the monster route, because as people find out, and if you play Kruleboyz and play against Kruleboyz, you'll find out that because of the spiky nature of venom encrusted weapons, the 6s do mortal wounds, and then working on the Sludge Raker mount and the Vulture mount's tail, it's very. For instance, at War in the Heartland, I had a Maw Crusher charge, so fully buff Maw Crusher with Mystic Shield, finest day ever. Charged my Sludge Raker, had no buffs on. He tanked the thing, lived on 2 wounds, spent a command point, fought at full strength, and just one shot a Maw Crusher, because every 6 you roll, just on the guy's attack with his 3 attacks, just straight 4 mortal wounds. So monsters in this army are not something you probably look at straight away, but as you play with them and build with them, you definitely lean towards them. Now, it's a very castle-y army. So the playstyle is a castle. You've got your blocks of 9 big yellers, because as we discussed, the book pushes you into big yellers. And if you're getting pushed into big yellers, you might as well take the Bolt Boys. Otherwise, what's the point in taking an army that benefits Bolt Boys? The 2 units of 9, like I talked about, it's because of the bravery downsides in the army. They're very good to take those. You can take the Killer Boss, which just completely ignores bravery, but that's the guy on foot. You're paying 115 points for him to stand there all game to just make something not run away. On a unit that's got a 6-up save, that when it gets shot just falls over anyway or gets charged, it's dead. So the list builds into a castle around your 9-man Bolt Boys with the Swamp Callers, with your Sludge Raker, because of the 12-inch aura of +1 damage on mortal wounds to mortal 6, specifically just 6s to mortal wounds, not the 5s from the Shaman, given the buff from the elixir. You do have this like 1,000-point castle every game, and then your other 1,000 points is where you play around with. So I played around with, because I love the Vulture. So my 1,000 points was that and 2 Vultures. And I was like, right, my Vultures are going to get out there. They're going to do what I need them to do. The problem with them is they've got 4-up save. They don't have crazy amounts of wounds. They're very swingy. And as soon as they get away from the Shaman buffs and the Sludge Raker buffs, they just fall over to anything, really. In the current meta, like 5 Hardboy Brutes can charge into 1 and kill 1. And when you're trading your monster, giving away VP, and 5 Hardboy Brutes are just going through you, that's ward, and just gone, there's no armor save there, take the guy off. So the list is a very, very castle list, and it goes into one of the weaknesses of the list, which is, because it's so castle-y, it's very hard to unpack. It's very slow. You've got movement 5 orcs that don't really want to be running, because if you're running with your Bolt Boys, you're not shooting with them.
There's no ability to run and shoot in.
Nothing. There is no run and shoot. There's no teleport in the entire Kruleboyz, even from the spells. There is a move a monster again, but it's a spell to move a monster, so you're giving up your elixir unless you've took an Arcane Totem on something.
Which again then leans into the big yellers getting the extra 3 inches because you're slow and you don't have the ability to move around the table. I want to pause you just on a second, because Gary, goddammit, Gary has brought up another good point. And I think he's got some I felt this when I did the book review, and Gary was mentioning that he thought that the gut rippers are a little bit too expensive for their points. And when I looked at it, like, they weren't such a bad war scroll. You get two wounds apiece, a 5 wound. They've got some interesting abilities, but I thought they were slightly overcosted for what they were going to be doing, especially when I was comparing them to Stormcast and some of the Vindictors, and like what you get with a Vindictor versus what you get for a Gut Ripper. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't quite seem fair. we talked a lot about big yellers, and we talked a lot about the castling, and that particular build plays to that style. Let's say we're in a world where gut rippers, either I'm obsessed with gut rippers and I'm going to be putting them in my list regardless, or with the winter FAQ coming, maybe there's a points adjustment. And let's say that gut rippers were more enticing in my list. Would you say that the castling for Kruleboyz is still true? And B, do you think that would change maybe some of your perceptions on the sub-allegiance?
So to answer B first, I still don't think he would change your sub-allegiance, because if they came down in points to, like, say, they're 180 currently, which is stupidly overpointed. It's a reason why we'll go into my list later on, why I have shooters in my list, because they do the same thing for 40 points cheaper. But if they was 140 or 150, you start questioning them. 300 points for 20 of them, 40 wounds with a 5-up save, mortal wounds on 6s with 2 attacks apiece. It's not a bad, like, anti-bunker. It's like something to sit in front and be like, okay, this is not just a screen anymore. It's something that can push out onto an objective. It's 20 guys, 40 wounds, lots of saves. And you could see a list where you ran two or three. The problem being is, I still do think, to answer question, to answer A, you still do want the 9-man Bolt Boys, and you want to be big yellers, because for 9 Bolt Boys, it's 360 points. You get the exact same. You get 20 Gut Rippers. Gut Rippers have to move with their movement 5. They have to get in there, have to fight, have to live what's ever hitting them. Let's say you run them turn 1, you don't get into combat till turn 2 or 3. That's 360 points of your army doing nothing till turn 3.
Yeah.
Whereas your Bolt Boys are projecting that power, still taking an objective, still moving up and gaining board space and doing the damage. I had tried a list of 3 units of 20 and just 1 block of 9. The Sludge Raker, take out the shooters that I put in and use them. And I've got a good friend who we discuss a lot of. He's currently at Bobo playing them. He went to War in the Heartlands with me, and he ran a list that had a vulture in and had a block of 2 blocks of 20 and less arc thingy boys. The problem being is not the book itself; it's every other thing. They don't trade well. So when you're looking at 360 points of, unless they went down to around about 300, but even then they don't trade well into other combat armies. So you're taking away the strength.
They don't have Ren, so you're really relying. Yeah. You're relying on what the shaman to give the mortal. You are, and I want to talk a bit about mortal wounds as well. I know some people were talking a bit about, like, just bringing it down and just blah blah blah, but you do seem like a mortal wound machine. And you've talked a lot about the Bolt Boys. I want to talk a bit about as well why you'd go the Bolt Boys over the Beast Skewer Bows. I think a lot of people, when they saw that war scroll and went, oh my gosh, I could do up to 12 mortal wounds on, especially with Archaon and, some really big monsters running around, there is a big incentive to run the Beast Killer Bows over the Man Skewer Bows. So,
they're a unit that because obviously giants are everywhere, right? Giants, Archaon, Lord of Changes, Marathi, but they don't do Ultra Marathi. They're everywhere. Maw Crushers, and you think, ooh, if I take 2 of those, I just kill a Maw Crusher, right? If it rolls those 6s or rolls those 5s. The problem is they might do 12 wounds to a Maw Crusher, but what are they going to go do to those pigs? They're going to kill a pig, maybe 2 wounds on a pig, 1 wound on a pig. Okay, what if they brought no monsters? Well, then you might as well have took the Bolt Boys, who just kill monsters just as well. To give an example, the average damage from a Bolt Boy unit, just in pure mortal wounds at 15-inch range, is 15 mortal wounds. Just the average from 9 Bolt Boys. No rerolls, 15-inch range with a 5-inch move, so 20-inch threat range is 15 mortal wounds. Obviously, you can get 3 Bolt what they called beast skewer bolt things. The big boy.
Anything I feel. I don't even play the bloody army, and you got men skewer bows, bolt.
Yeah. The beast.
I think
one.
When I looked at those rules, and I'm reading this like skewered rule for the beast skewer bow, and it tells me I can do up to a maximum of 12 damage from one shot.
Yeah.
I think, that to me sounds like a really, really tasty option. But what you're telling me is you're finding that, one, not every army has a monster. And I think we've kind of learnt that pretty quickly in 3rd edition. Initially, I think a lot of people thought, run all the monsters. We need monsters to score those extra battle tactics. And we've kind of realized that you don't need that many monsters. And the ones that you have, you're probably best off having these super durable monster leader heroes, as opposed to taking, like a War Hydra and like a Cockatrice and, some of these really cheap monsters for the sake of taking them. But you're finding consistently at a tournament where you don't get to choose your opponent, man skewer bolt boys are probably giving you more output than the beast skewered bow.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the consistent output. Also the threat. Nobody's scared of the beast skewer bow because it's like one shot. It might hit, might roll the 6, you roll 35 dice against a Gargant. Every 4 up is a mortal wound to a maximum of 12. But you can fluff that roll and still only do 2 or 3 wounds to a. You're not gonna. If you do, it feels bad. But it just. I like. I'm playing an army that's got no save, hardly any. Well, it's got a lot of wounds, which people don't realize. Like the average list that I've ran with is around about 140 to 150 wounds. If you go heavy into gut rippers, it's even more. It goes like to almost 200. But that can die from a gift of change through a portal. It can die from any lucky spell, and it's off the board. Anything that does D6 mortal wounds or random plink shots, like I dropped down 20 skinks and I just shot it off, like 16-inch range skinks. And I like the consistency of, right, I'm going to roll these. With 9 of them at 15-inch range, it's 19 dice because the extra guy gets his dice, and roll these dice. And statistically, before I think about spiking or not spiking, I should have 15 mortal wounds. Whereas 3 beast skewer bolt bows.
But big bow. I've been waiting for me to jump into this. Noise has said, and I agree.
Beast bow or man bow.
Yeah, voice. You nailed it. Voice. It's beast bow or man bow moving forward. No more technicality. Everyone knows what we're talking about. Yeah. Man bow, good. Beast bow, potential trap.
Yeah. Well, even 3, just 120 points. 3 bolt boys is 7 shots at 15-inch range. So on average, it's 5 mortal wounds just from those 3. It's a lot better than the beast bow. It's sad because the beast bow is cool. It looks cool. If it had another, if it worked against units, like let's say it did mortal wounds to units, not just monsters. Like if it went through the unit like a big bolt, or it did a line, like it had 2 versions of shooting. Almost every new shooting unit in the game now has 2 versions of shooting. It just needed a big 30-inch line, goes through everything, just on a 2-up D3 mortal wounds. Something that you can still do some chip damage to other units, but then every now and then you spike and do 12 wounds to a Maul Crusher or something like that. But yeah, I like when I build lists, and I like very efficient shoot you. I want something that's going to do what it needs to do every time, not just it's going to spike every now and then and do something. And my opponent didn't bring a big monster that I really want to kill, or I can kill for that instance. Like if I play Daughters of Cain, I've brought 2 beast bows, and they're just what they're there for.
You 3 damage. 3 damage. I want to go back to Allegiance stuff, just for a hot minute, because there's a few things I just want to unpack. One is the venom encrusted weapons. You obviously do 6 mortal wounds on 6s, and you can certainly bring that down with this Swamp Caller Shaman. Yes. How important is mortal wound damage for this army overall?
It's the only damage because even on your big monsters, the biggest range you've got is 2, and even then it's only on 2 attacks, and that's with his tail, not even his claw. His claw's 1 attack. The army's built, pointed, and I think works just based on how many mortal wounds it can efficiently put out. I played a game 7 hours ago against Seraphon, and I pointed at. I just looked at the Stegodon, not Stegodon, a Bastillodon, and just went, "There's 14 wounds, mortal wounds." I had loads of other hits, but it's just there's 14 mortal wounds. Take the Bastillodon off. I don't need to worry about what save you had. You've got all this mystical shield and finest day and all out defense of +3 ignoring rend 2, +1 ignoring rend 2. It's like my army's come to do mortal wounds, and that's all it's come to do. And even against armies like Trogs, one of my good friends plays Trogs. It's an army of 5 up, feel no pain.
Is that Stu?
No, it's not Captain. It's not Trog. It's a guy called Chris Banks. He runs a very similar Trog list, other than he has a big spider in because he loves the spider model. But even against Trogs, where everything's got a 5 up, feel no pain, because you're getting rid of the first save and they're going back to just a 5 up, you still do unseen amounts of damage. The shock on people's face, like when you're like, there's 20 mortal wounds from 9 guys from 15 inch away, well, they started 20 inch away, and they're like, "Oh, just take my Maw Crusher off." Stuff like, "Oh, there's Maw Crusher dead." You kill a Gargant a turn just with mortal wounds. All you need to do, even at 27 inch range with your 2 units of 9, with the reroll on turn 1, statistically, a Gargant without the Amulet of Destiny, you just ignore him and kill everything else. He's dead a turn. And I don't know any other army that can just say, if I roll the dice and the dice go exactly statistics, take that Gargant off every single turn. On a double turn, you kill 2. He's left with 2 on turn 2. The game's almost won just from mortal wounds. You don't even care about what anything else rolled. You roll the dice, and I just like, where's my 5s and 6s? Sometimes I've rolled the dice and forgot about the hits.
And because the venom encrusted weapons happen on both shooting and combat, again, this is kind of why it feels like you are going in one direction. Like, why would I go super buff up those gut rippers when they're not doing anything in turn 1? I can't like teleport doing shenanigans. They're not that durable when they get into combat. So, you know, I'm not going to get the total output compared to the man boys. Does that mean that you're thinking about having multiple shamans in your list? And I guess that's like, for anyone who's listening to this wondering, how do I take down Kruleboyz? I guess the power projection and killing those shamans would be probably one of the first things you want to do, or at least start taking out those man skewers or your beast bows.
Yeah. So I think every list I've seen, and every time there's a tournament on, I scroll through BCP. Where's the Kruleboyz list? How many shamans they got? How many bolt boys? I think every list has two shamans. I'm running with 3, but people try to kill those shamans. It's like, oh, they're giving mortal wounds on 5s. The reason why I run with 3, and I'll quickly say it, is the 3rd one's there if one of them dies. Like, I've got 2 left. The 3rd one's there to actually turn off invulnerable if ward saves with the spell. All my shamans just have the exact same spell, just nasty hex. It's probably one of the best spells in the game.
So
no ward
good
save for you. And the way the army works so well with it, because they're a castle army. People hit your castle, they're in range to nasty hex. You nasty hex them, no save, no ward save. Maw Crusher with Amulet dead, Nagash dead, Archeon
unleash
dead.
Unleash hell when you're inside my range. It's a great lit. And like, someone made a really good comment earlier. I'm trying to bring it up. They asked, like, wait a second, does this mean that you're playing like Vidar was mentioning? Does this mean like you're playing like the old Warhammer Fantasy army where it was like this immobile gun line? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. With your +3 inches to shooting, this feels like what Greywater Fastness wish they were, but they're not. You just like, you're a mobile, you're a castle. You are going to shoot the crap out of me. You're going to move up. You're going to take down my key pieces. You are doing mortal wounds. Forget the rend. You can pull down with the hex. You are just, so I guess if I wanted to beat you, you and I are facing each other. Is the key things that I want to be pulling down probably certainly your man bows and your those type of power projections, whether it's the beast bow or the man bow. That they're probably my first targets, right?
Yeah. So I've played against shooting lists, and I've got a little spreadsheet thing, but one of my army weaknesses is like literally anything with any random shooting. It could be 10 skinks, it could be 10 pink horrors, anything with any random shooting. If you have that opposite me, just throw them into the Bolt Boys. Throw them into the Bolt Boys. Don't care about the shaman. Leave the big guy. As soon as you get rid of those Bolt Boys, because my army is there. I mean, I've made a lot of adjustments to my list after playing a lot of games. That it's not, if I lose both Bolt Boys, I'm still in the game for scoring. I can keep scoring every turn, but my damage output is gone.
Yeah, killing the shamans, while that will stop the mortals going from 5s to 6s, one, it's a bit hard with things like Unleash Hell. Do you want to be killing a particular hero? But by taking out those man bows or the beast bows, if someone is building around the beast bows, it means that your damage output is really coming down to your gut rippers or anything else that you've kind of built around. Yeah. And we've already talked about the difference between the output of the man bows versus the gut rippers is just significant, significantly different. So, if I'm Carriage and I imagine something like Carriage and Overlords would be a nightmare. They just come down, pew pew. Your bows are gone. Lumineth with their 30 inches. Anything like Stormcast, maybe you could like drop from the sky. Judicators or long strikes, they could pop you. It's those things that can kind of break through that castle you've built because you don't have the durability. You want to hit me harder than I can hit you.
Yeah, there is some tech, and I've not spoke about a lot of tech yet, but one of the best things in this book for the way the list is built is actually command trait, and that's super sneaky. And that is, once armies have deployed, I can redeploy a Kruleboyz unit, specifically a Kruleboyz, anywhere on the battlefield 9 inches away. So what that gives me is a turn 1. If I'm 2-drop and I'm choosing, I can put 10 gut rippers in a almost daisy chain in front of my army. Probably, and most of the time I do it 12 inches away, so that 12 inch with the base. And if you drop down 9, it means that I'm within 27 inch, like almost regardless. And sometimes people are like, "Oh well, I'll drop 9 away because I can drop 9 away," and then you're like, "Well, I'm in range now." You could have dropped 15 away, but you've dropped 9 away. And a lot of the times that happens are like, "Well, I can drop 9 away, so I'll drop 9 away." And it's like, now you're in range. But that is super sneaky, and the warlord trait is just it is the best thing in that book. I've won games from it. Now, one of the biggest things is at War in the Heartland, I took super sneaky because a friend I was playing against played Iron Jaws, and we all know how fast Iron Jaws are. And if you don't, they get to move in the hero phase, then move in the movement phase, and then charge. The only stipulation of them moving the hero phase is they have to be more than 12 inches away from an enemy unit to move. So if you super sneaky a unit of 10 gut rippers strung along, so 7 and then 2 little clouds at each end, they can't destruction phase, hero phase move. So you've just negated a full movement, because Iron Jaws basically have 2 movement phases. You've just stopped their first turn movement phase because they can't do it. You put them 12 inches away, so they might make a lucky 12-inch charge, but they're going to charge those guys anyway. But super sneaky is just like War in the Heartlands. Like I say, I won my 3rd round game because he set up in such a way on the line to within 27 inches of my Bolt Boys to move, charge my screen. Start of the turn, I redeployed a unit of 10. A unit of well, but in Warhammer had a different list, but I redeployed just 3 bolt boys in front of his army, 12 inches away, so he couldn't mighty destroy us. So his entire army just lost the movement phase. So super sneaky is unbelievable. It goes into, I was playing around with, if you really want to, you can do a 40-man Gut Ripper unit that's super sneaky, is 9 inches away.
Did you say 40?
Yeah.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Because you can reinforce it 3 times. Oh, twice, sorry, 30 man.
No,
30
twice.
Man.
30.
Yeah,
I'm like,
30 man.
Yeah, wait a second. They're not grots. They don't go up in 20s. Yeah, you can get a 30 a person. Yeah.
So you can put a 30 man 9 inches away, and then the problem is they're 9 inches away. You can't. If they had a teleport, and this is going back to maybe a different build. If this book had a teleport, you could put those 30 Gut Rippers 9 inches away, teleport a shaman up, buff them, and then charge them in, move them, then charge. You still get to move. It is a tech that's there. It's just not there because you're just charging in 30 guys. Unless you're against a super weak army that can't kill those 30 guys, you're just tying them up. And that's really good. That's probably a win condition before the game's even started for your army. You put 30 Gut Rippers into their army and still shooting them for an extra turn now, or maybe an extra 2 turns, depending on how long it takes to get rid of those Gut Rippers.
So why not include a Soul Scream Bridge or our Uber driver Lockie the little boatman? Why not take either of those for that teleport?
Just probably points, and they have no way to buff spells. So you're just pure roll dice in. If you play against Archeon, just auto deny it in Tzeentch. If you play against Nagash, it's +3 to dispel. You play against anything.
Lumineth, yeah. A lot of the top tier armies right now have good spell casting. So you
can't. There's no auto cast on a 2. There's not even a +1 in it. Like there's not even a +1. So you just like, I don't even try to cast. If I get a what's it called? A nasty hex off, I'm like, I got mental. It's just nasty hex is off. That's it. Just go mental because it's cast on a 7, no buffs. In the world that is at the moment, the meta, if you get a spell off in the meta that you had no buffs, you've done something amazing. But yeah, that's the reason why you can't do it. It's too many points for something that's against the meta armies. You're just never going to get cast.
And Emma's saying as well, her husband is having problems with the Kruleboyz using Living Cities. Yeah, Living Cities is another one of those teleport, come from the side, shoot. They've got a really cool command ability that allows them to use it to kind of move after they've shot, and you could just rip apart your because a lot of your points are going to shooters, right? So I mean, like Unleash Hell will help, but Living City is definitely another one with a lot of high teleports that could cause you a nightmare, and they seem like very popular in the cities meta right now. They're very popular, so any ways that you can, and I think that's kind of why Super Sneaky allows you to push certain models forward or move them around and redeploy. So anything coming in from reserve or deep striking, you've got a little bit more of a chance to push them out, or force them to fail a charge, or they're not getting into the juiciest stuff that they want to get into.
Yeah, I definitely, against cities, I deploy in a corner somewhere, super sneaky a unit in front, and obviously string out some other stuff so that they can't get to that side, they can't get in front of you. Do the ranges yourself. If they've got 24-inch range, just make sure that nothing with that unit of Gut Rippers redeploying from super sneaky, you should, if you do it correctly, not get shot turn 1 by Living City. And then you push out the screens. You keep your Kruleboyz like in a safe spot, your Bolt Boys in a safe spot, and you push out the super secret tech, which is the shooters. Push the shooters out.
All right, well, we keep talking about shooters. We're going to get to it very soon. I'm going to bring up your list. I want to ask you about one more allegiance ability, and then I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Then we'll bring up your list and we'll kind of put it all into theory. Dirty tricks. You talked a little bit about it. You talked about it right at the top of the show, and you were saying that it's one of those things that, at the start of the game, because you only get one choice, right? It's cool because, if you go into a tournament, you can obviously choose every round. It's not like I have to declare that lethal surprise is the trick that I'm going to use at a tournament. I can choose each game. But when you are looking at an opponent and going, right, do I pick Noisy Racket, Lethal Surprise, Disappearing Act, or Covered in Mud? Is there a favorite? What are the considerations when you choose them? Get me in your mind. How do I be a better dirty trick player?
So to start as well, there is another way to get a second dirty trick.
Of course there is.
Yeah. So that's with the new Underworld's Warband.
Oh.
Yes, he's 170 points. He's very if you really want another dirty trick at the start of the game on a 5-up, he gives you a second dirty trick. So it's there. I don't think it's worth 170 points unless you've got everything in your list that you want. And then you're like, right, I'm just going to stick this guy in another dirty trick. It's like a 30% chance or something like that. It's not great, but there is a second way to get more tricks. But so what I basically, if they are a shooting army and they're not Lumineth, well, even against Lumineth and they got 4 foxes, I'm covered in mud every single game. The Seraphon, I'm covered in mud. They've got any sort of shooting that can threaten me outside of my threat range on turn 1 that I can't deal with, or something that can kill a unit of Bolt Boys or get rid of my big guy. I have to cover in mud. You have to hope you roll 2 dice or maybe 3. But if you get the 1 or 2, what you can do with Super Sneaky as well is if you covered in mud and you've set up aggressively and hoping to get 2, and you only get 1, you put that on your unit of 9 Bolt Boys, and then you Super Sneaky your other unit of 9 Bolt Boys that you didn't get the covered in mud just out of the way, just back into the corner. Use them turn 2 or 3. Your one that's in the front is safe. They can come in the game later on and not have to worry about those getting taken off turn 1, because ultimately the aim of the army is how do I keep my Bolt Boys alive for long enough to kill your army, because that's what's killing your army. Other than the Sludge Raker going mental every now and then, the Bolt Boys are killing your army. Everything else is scoring. Then if I'm against something...
Stop. Just for anyone who doesn't know, Covered in Mud is you roll 3 dice for on a 4+. You pick one friendly unit that is not a hero or monster. And when it's covered, so while that unit is in cover, it's not visible to an enemy unit. So they've got to be in cover, and it's on a 4+. So on average, you're doing 1 to 2 units that are going to be covered in mud, which obviously would cover the 2-man skewer Bolt Boys if they're in cover. So being in cover is an important one. Just for anyone who might not have the book yet or might not quite know what we've been talking about.
Yeah. And then the second one, so let's say they have no shooting, they're not Seraphon, they can't ever fret my Bolt Boys turn 1. Then I do the -1 to wound 1 if they're an aggressive army. Now, if they're not an aggressive army, there's no point doing it because it's literally, I forget the name of it. Got it? Is it Noisy Racket? Yeah, Noisy Racket.
Yeah, Noisy Racket. Yeah. Subtract 1 from the wound rolls made by enemy units in the first battle round.
Turn. Yeah, so it's stupidly good against Iron Jaws. Anything that's super aggressive. And it's just friendly models, so it also works on allies. So it works on the shooters if you ally them in, or anything else you ally in, because you can ally with Gits or like that. So anything you ally in, they're -1 to wound on the first turn. But I wouldn't ever take it against an army that's not going to threat me turn 1, because I'm taking it for no reason. You're taking it, you're not using it. You might as well go with something else. Now, Disappearing Act is then where I'd go. Disappearing Act is cool. It's weird.
It's my favorite. It is my favorite. I actually, if you were asking me, I would have picked Disappearing Act probably at least second, if not first. But if I was building your list, I could definitely see Covered in Mud. And if I didn't have much terrain, or if I didn't have enough, like I really had average terrain that I couldn't hide my 9 man bows, then I think Disappearing Act for me would be second, unless they were coming in from reserve. But tell me more about Disappearing Act.
So Disappearing Act is the one where you roll 3 dice on a 4-up. You pick an enemy unit that's not reinforced. Roll a dice. equal to or above their wounds characteristic. So on like stuff like Iron Jaws pigs, you need to roll a 5 or a 6. On trogs, you need to roll a 4, 5, or a 6. Stuff something with 1 wound, like 10-man witch elf unit, 10-man skink. You've all automatically got it. I think it is equal to.
On a 4+, pick one enemy unit that's not being reinforced. Roll a dice for each unit you picked. If the roll is greater than the wounds, the wounds characteristic. So you'd have to be on a single wound model. So which elves, it'd be a 2+.
Yeah.
If it was like a 3 wound, you're going for 4s.
Yeah. So the time when you use this, and it's because you're rolling 3 dice and it's a 4 up, you don't know how many you're going to get. Averages, you get 1. Sometimes you get 2. If you're really lucky, you get 3. But if you're taking this, there is a very specific reason. So I actually, in my game today, and I was playing against Seraphon, he only had one Bastillodon, and I set up correctly that he couldn't ever drop in the salamanders and shoot me. I actually didn't take the covered in mud because one Bastillodon can shoot me, but I set up outside of range unless he wanted to teleport in. I actually took this because on one of his objectives in the far left, he just put 1 unit of 10 skinks and nothing else near it. And I knew that this were going to leave him a massive choice. So I had to roll a 4 up. I rolled 1. I got the skinks. I rolled a 3 or 4, took them off the board. He had to redeploy them. But I'd put, where he'd done it, I'd put my Kruleboyz gut rippers almost 9 inches away. So when he'd come back down, I took the first turn, which I rarely do, and I moved on to the objective to score hold 1, hold 2, hold more. And all he had on that side, everything else was out of range, was these guys that I had making took off. So there's very fringe cases. So I did that to screen out and score me a point on turn 1 that I wasn't going to score without pushing too far in a thingy. But it's cool when you see people like, it's good for the bomb that I was talking about earlier. So the 30 gut rippers, they've got a screen or 2 that's just skinks. Imagine taking those 2 skink screens off and then charging through with 30 gut rippers that get to move first.
And they're good for screen removal, I must admit. The challenge with that is going to be you can't remove heroes. Or you can remove heroes, like if it's a 5 wound or 4 wound hero, you'd have to roll a 6. And I'm not sure if I have to roll 3 dice, get a 4+, and then roll above its wound characteristic. It feels like there's too many chances to fail for a hero. And obviously, any of the opponent's good units are probably going to be reinforced at least once. So you won't be able to remove that unit of annihilators or formulators or whatever the blood knights that have been reinforced or whatever. Oh, actually, no, blood knights often.
Blood knights, they're a good one of blood knights.
If someone has like a unit of 5, then boom, put it on the table.
There is a really weird edge case. You know the mission where you can't have reserves.
Yes.
So I don't know how I've never seen a TO rule it, but if I put you into reserves, any units that are put into reserves on that mission are automatically destroyed.
No, so, if you're thinking what you're thinking, you can't do it because at the end it says this dirty trick cannot be picked if the battle plan has no reserve rules.
So you can't do
it. Right at the end, you can't do it. You were thinking about pulling it off. Yeah. It's in reserve. It's destroyed.
It's dead.
No, you can't do it.
Yeah, no, I've never done it, but I was just thinking about that just then. But yeah, that's on there. It's a cool trick. It's funny to do. If you pull it off, the problem is you pull it off.
You've had nightmares. Look, I can appreciate it. At the end of Age of Sigmar 2, I played a game against 140 skinks and then his friends as well. So I have been hurt by skinks a few times. So being able to, I think the key, especially, I think for me, with your type of build, you don't quite care about because you're doing a lot of shooting, you don't care about the screens. But if you were building more around your monsters, around your combat focused gut rippers and things like that, removing screens, removing key pieces, having a chance for synergy, removing some of those heroes if you're really lucky could be really great. But I think, you're right. Covered in mud and probably even like noisy racket, probably a bit longer of a dirty tactic.
Yeah, there is another last thing I'd like to say about Lethal Surprise, the Disappearing Act is, like I talked about, sneaky tricks where you can redeploy a unit. You can also triple move a monster, so you can take the fast one and cast the spell that lets you move again. So you can hero phase move, cast a spell, move, then move. So you can get super aggressive with two monsters, or a monster in a... Basically, you can get super aggressive with your Sludge Raker, who has an aura of wholly within 12, 6s to hit, do an extra mortal wound, and your Gut Rippers. It's something I've tried a couple of times. The problem is the Gut Rippers are just missing that little bit of... They do well, but because they're so pointed, they don't trade well, and you've took such a big investment into them. But it's a cool little trick. I would, and like anybody trying to do something different with them, I would try the triple moving monster and the 30 Gut Rippers first turn. It catches people out. It's very
take
cool.
it to your local game store at like Elysium Games and like have a fun little game, but maybe don't take it to a tournament because you probably find it will backfire.
Yeah, it's not a tournament list, but it is a... I've come for a nice, fun, let's have a crazy... This book is a let's have some crazy stuff happen. And that is one of those lists where it's like, right, this is happening. You can't really stop it. It's happening. It's a casual game. This is going to be fun.
It's a casual Thursday game. You don't want to be there for 3 hours. You just want to have a laugh.
Yeah.
A couple of rapid fire questions that I'm bringing up your list. 1, Mega Gargant. Yay or nay?
No.
Why?
Sludge Raker's like 150 points cheap and can do a bit more. I don't know. I have a hate for Mega Gargants. I think that's probably why. It is a cool thing to put in. It can't make your army one drop, right? It can. You can make your army one drop. It's a hero in it. Yeah,
it's a hero. So you'd have to remove your commander.
Yeah, I'd have to get rid of the Sludge Raker, which you always want. If you want to go one. For me, no, just because I'm playing Kruleboyz to play Kruleboyz, and then Mega Gargant takes away more Kruleboyz.
No, that's fair. Kragnos, yay or nay?
No.
Why?
He's what, two, almost 300 points too expensive, probably 2. Yeah. He doesn't do anything. I reckon he probably does less damage than a unit of 9 Bolt Boys. Probably. I mean, I love the Sludge Raker because when he goes off, and I reckon he does more damage than Kragnos, and you can get 2 of those in for Kragnos.
You could build around if you went like that alpha
aggressive. Yeah, you can put him in that alpha list, yeah.
But yeah, like your traditional Bolt Boys, you probably don't want to take Kragnos. I was going to ask you, birds, whether it's Gobsprak or the Vulture Killer Boss, do you like either of them? And if I was going to go buy one of the kits, what would you prefer, Wizard or Hero Combat Bird?
Gameplay wise, because I'm very competitive, so I do it from my opinion. I'd build the combat guy, the normal hero. You'll get more use out of him. He fits in lists, and he doesn't feel as bad because he's 60 points cheaper, and he doesn't die to absolutely nothing like some skinks. I have proper bad PTSD with Seraphon, I've realised.
the chat's noticed as well. It's like it's our reference point.
The guy I own the shop with, Elysian War Games, the guy I own it with, he plays Seraphon, so a lot of my games are against Seraphon, and the other guy plays Marathi Bow Snakes. So it's just and it's not the nice Seraphon list. It's literally Draco's Tail, 5 Salamanders, Celestian Prime crap. So yeah, I have nightmares over Seraphon.
I do like Gobsprak.
He's a cool. I have 2 of them, so I built one as the guy, one as Gobsprak. I think I've used Gobsprak once. He's got an interesting command. Well, the single Vulture has an interesting ability which lets you do a... it lets you do... When you do a command ability, it lets you do a command ability again. So you can double +1 to hit, which you don't really care about. But the most important is you can double redeploy, which is big sometimes in your list, but you can double Unleash Hell. Which is just for 240 points, a double Unleash Hell. It's why I started with one in the list, and it begrudges me to take one out. But
How are you doing the double? How are you doing the double unleash hell? Because I can see that in the Mouth of Mork, you can issue unleash hell without the -1 to hit.
No, so this is not from Gobsprat. This is from the normal, the base one.
Oh, you're talking the killer boss.
Yeah, the killer. So
Sorry.
Gobsprat, I think, in a bad way, he's probably one of the worst units in the book. Yeah, and I hate to say that because
that sucks because he's got like he can once per game can unbind with a 3d6. You have a 6-up ward. If you unbind on a 10+, it can do D3 or D. So if you can do D3 mortal wounds or D6 mortal wounds back to a caster if you unbind, I think like that's pretty sweet.
My main problem with him is you have no offensive spells. You have very short range buffing and debuffing spells. So he's sat in your castle for 300 points, hoping to dispel, and he has a 5-up save, and he just gets shot like just anything. And I've played with him. I think I've played 2 games with him, and I quickly like swapped him out for a normal bird because the normal bird just has so much more value. It plays the list perfect. If it was a little bit more killy, the normal bird would be in the list for me. Or if I didn't need as much screens, like Gut Rippers was cheaper, the bird would probably be in my list. I'd drop the third. I'd drop a Charmin, and the bird is cool. But yeah, Gobsprax.
That sucks. That sucks. I got excited about the Bird Wizard, and maybe there'll be some slight changes coming in the future.
He's way too overpointed because he's pointed like almost same as a Lord of Change or something around. They're a bit more, but he's pointed to do damage, but he doesn't really do damage. And he's dispelling, but that's all he's doing. It's sad. It's sad. If they had a better, like, they've got a good law, and I quite like the law, but no, he's a even in a casual game, because he's going to bring you so many. You're going to be 300 points down almost. That's how bad it is. He's going to bring you so many, like, oh, I wish that was a normal guy. I wish that was 20 more Gut Rippers. Like, yeah, sad. It's sad. I've tried, and it's just sad because it's such a cool model.
I think it's the last question I had to ask that the chat also brought up. Big Wah. I know this is not the Big Wah show. What are your thoughts on bringing Kruleboyz into something like a Big Wah? Oh no, sorry. This is the Kruleboy Wah. I did want to ask you about the Big Wah.
Yeah,
like,
the Kruleboy Wah.
This is the Allegiance Wah. Yes, sorry. I was going to ask you about Big Wah, Kruleboyz versus Big Wah. Forget that. We'll do it. I'll do a Big Wah show. But what are your thoughts on the Kruleboy Wah, which is at once per game?
Double fight.
What do you do? Yes,
you fight. It's basically Luminef, but once per game. Once.
You pick two friendly Kruleboy units that are wholly within 18 of the general, and they can fight after each other.
Yeah, double fight. At the War in the Heartland, my list was the 2 units of 9 Boltboyz, some shooters, 2 shamans, and 2 sludge rakers. And a lot of the time, I'd use the Big Wah, and I'd set it up in games. I'd use the Big Wah to double team a big monster.
So the Kruleboy Wah.
The Kruleboy Wah, yeah.
Not the Big Wah. Just in case people are like on some weird tangent. No, we're talking Kruleboy Wah.
Yeah, so I'd Kruleboy Wah, charge 2 sludge rakers in, and just delete whatever they're charged into. Because you get 2 of them going. Any 6s is like, you have 6 attacks between them. That any 6s is 4 mortal wounds. Then you have 12 attacks. That any 6s is 3 mortal wounds. It's good. You can also catch people out with it, like somebody charges into your Boltboyz and your Sludge Raker in my current list, and it's like, right, my general's going to fight, the Boltboyz are going to fight, the other Boltboyz are going to fight. It's loads of mortal wounds. You just got hit by 3 units that are doing almost the same amount of mortal wounds as what they do in shooting, but in combat, and they don't expect it. Like, oh, I'll fight there last because it's only some Boltboyz. And then all of a sudden it's 20, it's 9 bolt, 18, 36 attacks. Any 6 is 2 mortals, any 5 is 1 mortals. So before you've even gone, I literally killed a Maw Crusher. And the reason why I say Maw Crusher is that War in the Heartlands, I played 5 games, 3 games against Iron Jaws with double two of them had double Maw Crusher and one of them had single. I lost to one of them on a double turn. But yeah, it's cool. It's weird because you'd look at it and you'd probably think, oh, well, I'm playing a shooting army. What do I care about that? But all your buffs that work in shooting work in combat. So it's actually very good. And it leads to the army. It leads to it's another trick. It's another trick to pull out when your opponent doesn't expect it. You probably told them about it at the start of the game. They forgot about it. And then you're like, right, these 3 units fight now. One of them's my general, the other 2, or these 2 units fight now, or like, and they're like, oh, damn, didn't realize that. Here's all the mortal wounds.
I think the interesting thing as well is it's a once per battle in the combat phase,
yes,
not in your combat phase.
Yeah.
So you could, I can see the sequence working like this. Let's say you were playing that Iron Jaws or some type of alpha strike, right? They want to get into your face early. So you've been shooting at them, right? So like, well, the only way I can solve this problem is getting in and, taking down the screens and killing your man bows. Cool. Seems logical and how I'm going to respond to your army. So I charge up the board, Maw Crusher, Piggies. I drop down Stormcast from the sky and roll that 7 for a charge, whatever it might be, right? And you throw down Unleash Hell.
Like, kill you.
Shit. Okay. Then you get into combat. Cool story. You then fight with your general and then your 2 your gut rippers or whatever combat screens you might have. And then, hopefully you can wear that down. You either kill the unit with your mortal wound output or you significantly reduce it. And then if you get the turn back, you just shoot those threats off the board and continue on your merry little way.
Yeah, that same thing basically happened in one of my games at War in the Heartlands. You charge with 2 Maw Crushers, 1 Maw Crusher created my screen, and then I was like, right, I'm going to big war. I'm going to Kruleboyz war with General Sludge Raker and this unit. They're going to pile into the other Maw Crusher who's not yet fought. He didn't kill the entire screen. He like 1 down to 2 goblins, 2 shooters. Now you put on my list, I can talk about the shooters. So charging to the
I brought the list. I brought the list, folks. Like I've been teasing you all about this list, and Ellis is like, shooters, and like some poor person's looking at their book going, where is his shooters army? Where is his shooters? What is he talking about? So let me read it out. Let me explain what the list is for the podcast people, and then you can explain some of the rationale. Someone asked a question, Paul asked the question as well about, do you have nasty hex in your list? And the answer here is clearly no. And despite being able to turn off ward saves, I want to know why you haven't got a wizard. But before we get there, you got the Snatcher Boss on the Sludge Breaker Beast, which is the general. You've got the Super Sneaky. We've talked a lot about that already in the show. Amulet of Destiny. I want to know why you've chosen that over a faction artifact. And then you've got the Mount Trait of Fasten. You've got 3 Shamans with the Potgrot. You have 2 units of 9 man bows. I read the first word and the end words, like man boys. Like, cool, you got the man boys. You've got 2 units of gut rippers, 2 units of this list is slightly wrong because they are certainly allies. They are taking up your ally pool. Yeah. 2 units of Gloomspite Gits shooters, wrapped up in a double battle regiment, which brings this list down to a true drop at 1990. Your triumph, if you happen to have the 10 points, is inspired, and you've gone in and got all 4 out of 4 reinforcements and 148 wounds, and a lot of that would probably be coming from the shooters. That'd be a good 40 wounds coming out of the shooters.
Yep. I just to quickly, I do have nasty hex. It's on all 3 of the shamans.
Okay,
I
cool.
just forgot to put I forgot to put it over, but it is on all. Literally, it's on all 3 because most of the time they're elixir in, and one of them 1 turn just goes right. Nasty hex if I can.
So talk to me about some of the logic here. So we've already talked about like the man
boys, the
man boys, the man bolt boys. We talked a little bit about the screens, but like what are you thinking here, and how are you kind of like hitting the Kruleboy win conditions?
Yeah. So this, I've noted it a lot, but I'll go back. This army is a castle army. It takes a long time to unpack if people play against it well. If it gets to unpack early, it very, very quickly snowballs because the amount of models and bodies in front of my Bolt Boys that I have. There's nasty tricks with the shooters playing to it. So going back to War in the Heartlands, I played against Iron Jaws 3 times. So I obviously took Noisy Racket in 3 of my games because I knew they were going to first turn charge me. Because I had the two shooters. It's a bit of a different list, but I did have 2 units of 20 shooters. So now on the first turn, there's units of 20 shooters and -1 to hit because of the netters, and now -1 to wound. So all of a sudden, a Maw Crusher charges into 20 shooters and doesn't kill them on averages, which is exactly what happened in 2 out of 3 of my games and exactly why I won. But the list plays. It is a castle list, but with the amount of Gut Rippers and shooters, and I have got 2 units of Gut Rippers in there, the list I took to the War in the Heartlands had 0, and I quickly realized that it is a mistake. They're not as bad as they look. They're overpointed, but it's the only thing in the book, and you have to deal with it. They're overpointed.
Yeah.
You can, instead of those Gut Rippers, honestly, you can switch them out for 3 units of 3 Bolt Boys and just go some MSU Bolt Boys on top of your big Bolt Boys. But it gets away from the way the list wants to play. And the list plays in keep the Bolt Boys alive for as long as you can, while actually the way this list plays. That's why the shooters are there and not the hobgoblins, because the hobgoblins are 20 points more for 20, worse bravery, worst abilities, don't have the -1 to hit, don't have the +1 save. They also have shooting attacks. Never rolled shooting attacks on them.
Goblin players never roll shooting attacks on the shooters. Like they hit on 5s, wound on 4s.
They're not
I'm not going to roll 20 dice to get like 4 hits. Go away.
Yeah. So I mean, the funny enough thing is, I actually do shoot them against Daughters of Cain because 40 of them shooting into Marathi will probably take the 3 wounds off. And then you've just cheekily took 3 wounds off of Marathi on a turn and not had to do anything else, like no Bolt Boys, no Arcane Bolts, not even had to charge it of anything. You've just gone a little screen of shooters, just going to shoot Marathi, and hopefully they take the gate. I played against Daughters of Cain with this list 4 times, and one of the times throughout the game, because I use him like a wave, Gut Rippers in front, shooters behind, the shooters alone just killed Marathi. Just every turn, 40 shots. I started getting whittled down by the end, but like the first shot wound came from shooters, the last wound came from shooters. There might have been like 2 or 3 in between from Bolt Boys, but the shooters did the Marathi killing.
Is there anything you would gain by taking the Hobgrots over shooters? Like I know there's a points difference. So I'm going to put that aside for a second. But is there anything that you would gain by actually keeping? Because some people here might go, I don't want to break out of my allegiance. Like I just want to stick to purely Kruleboyz. Is there anything that you gain for having Hobgrots?
I say in anything you lose stuff. You lose the -1 to hit on your screen, which can really throw odds and statistics out when something should kill a screen and doesn't. But that is why I chose that. If you said to me now, why have you took those instead of those? Like 100% is because shooters played right and putting your nets in the right place, a -1 to hit, and that is it. That is literally the only reason why they have it over the Hobgrot. That's why they're in the list over the Hobgrots. And they bring something more than the Hobgrots do. And yet, I mean, you said no points, but they're 15 points more for 10 because these basically shooters are 70 points for 10. So that's an extra 60 points in my list, which I just don't have. And I'd have to lose a Shaman and then be under by 50 points. And you can't really do it with that because you're not putting endless spell in because the Triumph's better. Hobgrots at 85 points, 75 points, I think. Are they 75 or 85?
I think they were 80. They're just 80.
80. Yeah. So the 10 points more, so 40 points more. Yeah, sorry.
I was just thinking because you would
Yeah.
obviously synergize a little bit better with your mortal wound output because they would get the 6s, right?
No, they're not Orruks.
Oh, is it keyworded to
Kruleboyz Orruks? Yeah.
So they've got the Kruleboy keyword, but they don't have the other mortal wound. Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So really, like pound for pound, you're getting cheaper wounds. You get the -1 to hit from the net,
and you're getting a shot every night, and you're actually also getting a better save because they have a 5 up against shooting.
Yes, they get +1 to shoot against shooting as long as there's more than 10. I think it is.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's the banner, somewhat. But yeah, like that's why they're not in the list. If they was 60 points and cheaper than the shooters, I still don't think I'd put them in the list because you're getting more from the shooters, which sucks. But if you wanted to play full faction, like you can do it. I'm not saying don't. I play very efficient, and that's why those are in there. They're there for the efficiency, and to skew the maths on people. Like -1 to hit, yeah, you're gonna have to spend your command point now to get +1 to hit. But you thought you might be hitting on 2s, but now you're hitting on 3s. Back to you hit on 3s base. You thought you might go to 2s, but now you're back to 3s. It literally won me a game at War in the Heartlands when a Maw-Crusher charged into 20 shooters after I'd deployed badly, so that these other Maw-Crusher could pile in and kill my Bolt Boys, because you can smash in and bash in, which comes before Kruleboyz War. But literally 2 shooters lived because of the -1 to hit. Because every dice some big monster hits with, because let's face it, most of the time my screens are getting killed by big monsters because the big monsters want to get in and through to my Bolt Boys. Anytime a big monster doesn't kill a screen, they're stuck. And yeah, the shooters are strong. The Gut Rippers are in there as much as I like Gut Rippers. They are overpointed, like we've established. But they're in there because of sneaky tricks. Gives me a unit to sneaky tricks that's not a Bolt Boys unit. Because that's the other thing the Hobgoblins would give you. That is the only thing they would give you, is the sneaky tricks. Not sneaky tricks, super sneaky. So you can super sneaky the Hobgoblins instead of having to do it to some Gut Rippers, which is a massive bonus. But sometimes I want those Gut Rippers up there because it's 20 wounds, and like you have to commit in this game to get rid of 20 wounds on a 5-up save when I can give it a 4-up save with a command point. Which one thing in this army does well is it doesn't care about spending command points. You can spend them willy-nilly on whatever you want. There is no command ability. You want to give that unit +1 to hit. You want to give that unit all-out defense from a random shot. Go ahead. You've got 2 command points every turn, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. There is no set thing. I would always save one for bravery, and that's it.
With the Snatcher boss, are you primarily setting up like the Snatcher boss? I'm thinking about this in my world, like where I'm a Cities of Sigmar player and I have my Hurricanum in the middle and things surround my Hurricanum to get +1 to hit. Is that kind of the way you look at your Snatcher boss, where you have like in the middle of your 2 man bow units to make sure they get the +1 to their mortal wound, or they double the mortal wounds on 6s?
Yeah.
Not on 5s.
It's +1 mortal wound on a 6. Yeah.
Yes. So it means that if you put down the shaman with its elixir, I roll those shots from the man bows. If I roll a 6, that's 2 mortal wounds. If I roll a 5, it's a 1 mortal wound.
If you roll a 6, it's 3 because the base 2 mortal wounds. The base 2 damage. Because venom encrusted weapons is your damage as mortal wounds. So a 6 is 3 mortal wounds and a 5 is 2 mortal wounds. That's why I'm saying with 9 of them rolls 19 dice. So on average, you're rolling 3 6s, 3 5s, which is 15 mortal wounds every time you roll dice.
Yeah, right. Because I guess the other question was going to be, and one of the other rapid fire questions I was going to ask you was about Dobie, your Dobie, our Marsh Crawler Slogoth, who gained the Kruleboyz keyword in the FAQ. And that gives you +1 to hit, right? But for you're more worried about the mortal wounds as opposed to actually just getting +1 to hit.
Yeah, Dobby's +1 to hit in melee.
He doesn't affect.
Yeah, Yeah, it doesn't affect range.
That's right. So
Yeah.
if you were going to go down a monster or a gut ripper route,
yeah, he's being a monster gut ripper every time. If you're going if you're taking 2 monsters or 3, or if at any point you're taking a block of gut rippers and a monster, Dobby auto goes into your list.
But he's not going to help you with the Bolt Boys.
No, he doesn't. He does nothing. Sadly,
yeah. Dobby is definitely a Gloomspite Gitz crew boy in disguise. Absolutely, he's the best new model that Gloomspite Gitz has gotten in a long time.
Yeah. My mate who plays the Trogs locally, he was like, "He's in my list every time. He's in his list now. Dobby's cool." Dobby doesn't work on shooting, so he's doing nothing other than buffing some gut rippers who are basically essentially there for the first 2 or 3 turns, because this list is hard to unpack. First 2 or 3 turns, they're scoring my hold 1, hold 2, hold more. Whilst I had a problem with this list, the previous list to this that I took to War in the Heartlands, is I didn't have those 2 units of gut rippers. I had another Sludge Raker, and my problem was I was killing armies. 5 games, I tabled all but 1 opponent, but my games were super close. There was 12. The different scoring metric from Honest Wargame was in use, so there was like 12 8s, 13 7s. It's why I went 4.
It was a differential. That's right. They were using the differential,
and they were using it as the primary scoring. So although I went 4 and 1, I came like 40th. It was my 4 and 1 games. The 1 game I lost was on a priority roll against Iron Jaws. We knew it was. This army's almost like I used to play Carajons when the clown car existed. That was, so now you know the type of player I am. So I played clown car.
A jerk. He's a jerk player.
I played clown car, which is an unpacking castle army that shoots, and now I play Kruleboyz, which is an unpacking castle army that shoots. So I didn't go far, and I played them a long time ago. So
I was laughing at because Gary, the Caro player, is coming to your defense.
Yeah, he will do, because me and Gary, a long time ago, was talking about the clown car list, and now we talk about Kruleboyz as well, which is funny.
And I guess without the gut rippers, you don't have enough good screens, right? Because some offensive armies would be able to take down those shooters pretty quickly, probably be able to soak up some of that unleash hell goodness, especially like a turn 1 running your face. You won't get off many of your buffs. But having those gut rippers just adds that additional layer. And obviously, as you've said as well, you could use that dirty trick to kind of play around with some screening and, create that road bump to at least delay you until you can then unleash absolute hell with those 5 up models.
Yeah. So a thing I found as well is the Shaman's Elixir. It works by a unit within 3, wholly within 12, out of 3 of an enemy unit. So if somebody gets first turn, like an Iron Jaws player, which happened to me, hit my screen of goblins, went through them, and I was like, fair enough, I'll just buff up and kill it. But the problem is not the Iron Suns, the Bloodtooths, is it? They can charge at the end of the charge phase.
Yeah, with the piggies, the Gorgrunners can do an extra.
And you can't stand and shoot that, because that's in the combat phase, and the stand and shoot command ability is in the charge phase.
Yes.
So I lost my unit of 20 goblins. He charged through, then charged into my guys. Couldn't kill them, obviously, but then it comes to my turn, and I can't buff them because they were within 3. Shaman doesn't work. So literally, after that game, this was only round 2 at the tournament, I sat down and I rewrote my list, and to this list that I play now, because I fixed that by just putting 10 gut rippers there. It's fixed.
Crazy idea. Would you consider having a unit of fanatics in one of those shooter units to then create another speed bump?
Yeah,
they don't do as much damage as they used to. But I'm just thinking, like, you could release the fanatics. If they choose to attack, you've got the layer of fanatic, shooter, gut rippers, archers. Or is that a bit of is that overkill?
It's not overkill, and I thought about it. The only problem is the 4-in-1 allies. You don't have enough units. It's the only problem. I tried.
You'd have to drop one of the shooter units.
Yeah,
and probably
you take away your list. Yeah. So
it's situational
because I was looking at it and I was just well, the one thing I was trying to do is the unit of the last swamp caller shaman I was going to take out for the Ripper Snarlfangs. And I was like, oh no, they're allies, can't do it. And I was like, how? Because they bring it's a weird system where you're taking out a buff piece for 3 models, but those 3 models in this list is just like, it's crazy what they do for you.
I hadn't looked at them until I did my Gloomspite show and they were brought to my attention. I'm like, holy shit, they are a good allies. They're a good Gloomspite ally, or they're a good Gloomspite addition, especially because, and this is probably why the shooters work as well, is that they are not battle line, unlike your Gut Rippers who are your battle line. It means that, killing those 10 Gut Rippers is going to give away broken ranks. While with the shooters, well, not only is it a pain in the ass to kill 20 with the -1 to hit with the nets, and just generally annoying, but you're not giving away broken ranks. Like you're making it harder for your opponent to score that battle tactic, and they can still join a core battalion. And if you want to put them in hunters because you want to be able to make sure you put on a certain buff or whatever it might be, you've got the option if you didn't want to go double battle regiment.
Yeah. No, the shooters are good in there. The Snarlfangs are cool because I was like, the 6-inch piling, I can stop them from getting charged in that turn where they can charge in the thing because I can pile in 6. But there's so many things because all your allegiance abilities works on allies as well. It's just friendly stuff, so you can do so much thingy.
And Gary just pointed that out. He's talking about, with the Fanatics, you could cover them in mud. So if you took the Spore Splatter Fanatics and not the Loon Splatter Fanatics, Spore Splatter block line of sight. They've got some good shenanigans. So they could block off line of sight. So a lot of your opponent, like not Lumineth, but Daughters of Cain Bow Snakes, your Stormcast long strikes, that you'd block off line of sight. And if you covered them in mud, because it's friendly, not keyword, it means that, you could actually incorporate them in covered in mud. That's a good one.
There's another cool friendly only ability, and that's another command trait. That's 2 cool command traits. And that's the Egomaniac, which is on a 4+, you can bounce mortal wounds to a nearby unit, and it's just nearby friendly. So I played around with it for a while because the vultures, they're really good to get out there and score battle tactics because they're a monster. You can make them double move, you can make them triple move. They're really good. The problem is somebody just shoots them and they're dead, and you've lost 240 points. But with Egomaniac, you can just put all those wounds onto the shooters or some hobgoblins. Like I said, this book, like right at the start, this book drew me to it because of all the little cool tricks and little interactions that's in there.
Maybe 2 final questions and we'll kind of wrap things up unless something burns out from the chat. One, I mentioned when we were talking about your list, you have Amulet of Destiny. And I said I did want to ask you about Amulet of Destiny. And I think I know the answer to this one is, why would you go Amulet of Destiny over a Kruleboyz artifact?
Have you looked at the Kruleboyz artifact?
That's why I said I think I know, but I wanted to hear it from you.
So I said probably 30 or 40 times. Yeah, 30 or 40 times now that shooting kills Kruleboyz unless you have to against I played Seraphon a lot, like I've said. Today I played them again, and I left a tiny spot open at the back, tiny spot for the Celestian Prime to drop down. I know he's not Seraphon, but a Bastardon killed Celestian Prime to drop down, auto charge 12, pile around a Shaman into my Bolt Boys after getting shot and lived because he got the 4 reward. But shooting is annoying, and there is one artifact, and it's the Eye Pebble. Once per game, all friendly Kruleboyz units within 12. I took this to the war in the Heartlands and didn't play a shooting unit against a shooting army with one shooting unit all weekend long. So it feels bad. But Mork's Eye Pebble is basically Amulet of Destiny, but for your entire army, whole within 12 once per game, which stops any feels bad when you don't get covered in mud against a shooting army. It is the only argument that I would ever do for going to because you can do a Warlord, you can do a Battalion Warlord, take that on one of your Shamans, and the one turn where like, right, they've dropped in their 5 Salamanders, the Bastillodons in range, the Skinks are in range, or against Sentinels, the Sentinels are in range, the Foxes are in range. Right, well, my army's got a 5-up wall to save this turn. It's cool. And then you go to a tournament, because I took this and I've had that exact same thought. This is cool. It's good. The only thing that counters my army is shooting. I've got something here that stops against shooting. Go to a tournament. I played Gloomspite Gits twice, and I played Iron Jaws 3 times. So it's just like
you were just trying to prove your might against Gork and Mork.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I was sad times. I took it out of my list, put that on because it's the only monster in my army. He's also my general. So there's 2 battle tactics that can be given to my opponent off that one model in my army. He's not that strong to begin with. He's only got a 4-up save. He can find his day. You can Mystic Shield him if you feel like he's going to get targeted. But giving him the amulet, we all know how good the amulet is. Yeah. Is good. If there was 2 of them, like my original list didn't have 2. It had 2 and no amulet. It had the Eye Pebble. If there was 2, I don't see the point in the amulet because they'll just bring it down the other one and kill it and get the BPs there. You go Eye Pebble. I honestly believe if you're taking 2, or you go Eye Pebble, or you take 1 with Egomaniac and 1 with amulet, and you got 2 really unkiller, like really tanky bosses that do a lot of damage and stay around for a long time. But that's why it's in there. There's one of them. He gives away 2. He gives away 2 battle tactics, and I need him to not give them away as easy, or at least make my opponent think.
I think the challenge as well with the 4 Kruleboyz artifacts is they're all once per battle. Where
once per battle,
the Amulet of Destiny is just every turn. So you don't have to make that hard trade off. And with the 5-up ward, yeah, cool. You might have saved me now, but I might have just been delayed. The inevitable. So again, I go back to Illuminate Archers or Daughters of Cain Bow Snakes. Yeah, 5-up ward, but next turn you'll be able to do your thing. So I need to be able to take you out before you take me out.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably partially the answer, but I like the Pebble. I think people generally talk positively about the Pebble.
Yeah. I'd take the Pebble if you're not bothered about being 2-drop. I would on. If you're like, right, I don't care if I'm 2. I really like being 2-drop because of the meta. But if you really don't care about being 2-drop and you're building a list, take a Battalion, take a Warlord, take the Pebble, and take the Amulet, because the Pebble is good against the greatest counter of this list, which is shooting, and it's that one turn where you use it, a little bit more lives than what would have died, and that could swing you a game.
I think to answer and Hades made an interesting point with Stabbers first Gut Reapers. I feel like Stabbers are much more a better anvil. You're probably right. You are probably right. You obviously don't get the Kruleboyz mortal wounds from the Stabbers. The other problem, and Ellis has already mentioned it, is that the Gloomspite being allies are being a coalition force. So that's 1 in every 4. So you can only in an 8-drop have 2 units of goblins. Yep. So, you've still got to have at least 1 unit of Gut Rippers, or you got to find a way to go out to be a 12-drop to get that extra. And then how do you dilute the list and what's the impacts? And I think with you going so heavily in the man bows, and then, all the different synergies with the shaman, it doesn't allow you those cheap options to kind of get out to 12. And is that a worthy trade-off just to get another unit of gits?
Yeah, you can not. No, you can go to 12 you can take multiple units of 3, because every 3 you take, you get an extra shot because the leader gets an extra shot. So the units of 3 gets 3 extra shots over 9, but doesn't get the whole big buff that they would.
And I would be probably more inclined to add an extra, because you do see variants of this list by people taking screens of 3 Bolt Boys as opposed to Gut Rippers. So it's just all that shooting, whether it's a couple of big blocks, a couple of small blocks, and then they just kind of move forward and just pew everything.
Yeah. I mean, my original list had no gut rippers. I've had plenty of lists that had no gut rippers and some gut rippers and multiple 3-mans and none and a 1 unit of 9, and then loads of 3-mans and only 1 shaman in. They all work. This list that I'm saying, this is my list. It's not the best list. It's not the ultimate list. But I've played 20 or 30 games with this book now, all different lists, and this is the list that me personally I feel the most comfortable going to an event and at least going 3-2, most of the time probably going 4-1. If you come up against Lumineth twice, you've lost 2 games. So, like, if you come up against Seraphon,
I think you've lost in life if you come up against 2 Lumineth.
Yeah. If you play Lumineth, lose, then play Lumineth and lose, like, just enjoy your next 3 games because you've got a shooting army that's playing on the bottom tables and it's just going to make some people sad.
Do you ever feel that one of the questions from the chat was, do you ever feel like you want to incorporate Bone Splitters and Iron Jaws into Kruleboyz? Because obviously you can't, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You can't even bring them in as allies. Like, if you want to bring in Iron Jaws or Bone Splitters, things like even like the Rogue Idol is not a Kruleboyz model, so you can't even bring that in.
No, the Rogue Idol has the Kruleboy keyword.
Oh,
yeah. It has.
Because I knew it was Bones. I knew it was Bone Splitters, and I know it was.
It's got Iron Jaws. Yeah, they added Kruleboyz. Yeah.
So then, let me ask you: would you consider adding a Rogue Idol to the mix?
Oh, I mean, I think I mentioned it right at the start in a 1-drop. You basically what you do is, and to get the Rogue Idol in, is you drop the 2 units of Gut Rippers, one of your Shamans and one of your Goblins, put the Rogue Idol in and put 3 Bolt Boys. You lose all your screen, but you gain something that's super aggressive. It's got the Kruleboy keyword, so I think you can super sneaky it. Can you super sneaky it? That'd be fun. I think you can.
Oh, you got some work in progress list tech happening right now. Can you super sneaky?
Yep, you can super sneaky it. So you can build a very, very strong. I don't have a Rogue Idol, and I've never tried a Rogue Idol in the list. But
I've seen other armies like doing double Rogue Idols with Alpha Beast Pack and like getting that extra free D6 move at the start, and
you'd get that.
They are a lot of points.
Yeah, you could super sneaky that D6 move as well. So you could super sneaky move, but you get to move after super sneaky anyway because it's just a hero. It's not a hero phase move, or it's a pre-game move.
That might be better in your combat build with your
you can combat
your Grinning Blades.
Yeah, you can definitely put. You can also cast a spell that double moves it because it's a monster, Kruleboyz monster. Yes. So yeah, you can probably build into that. I might try that now. That sounds
all right.
fun.
Well, yeah, we got some working list tech. I completely forgotten it got a Kruleboyz update. I just remember it's like 405. I can't ally it into Gloomspite Gits. Last question, and I'm going to bring it up from Catarific, but I'm going to expand upon the question that Catarific has asked. So Catarific has asked, do you have any deployment tips for Shootcast? So I'm going to expand it just a little bit to go, what is your tactical tips or your deployment tips? So let's start off with like shooting in general, Lumineth, Bow Snakes, KO, just your shooting that can power project to you, maybe faster than you can get them.
Yeah. So there's a reason why I changed my list from the double to the single, and the key is to pick a corner. The middle is very, very hard to screen against, especially if they can deploy just 9 inches away, not from sides, anywhere. Like Bow Snakes can teleport up. Lumineth's a completely different story. I think everything I'm saying now, just ignore Lumineth because the Foxes move 24 inch with a 24-inch range. The Sentinels can teleport with a 30-inch ignoring line of sight. They're completely like you cannot do anything against them. You can't deploy out of the range. You can't because all they do is okay. You've set up perfectly so you can't teleport within 9 and be in range of your Bolt Boys. Okay, they don't teleport, then they just double move.
Yeah,
right, and then they're still in range. It's just 42-inch range. the best thing to do, and it's what I do against Seraphon, I do it against KO, I do it against the Marathi Bosnick, is I pick a corner and I will pick the corner based on terrain, something with a large terrain where you can put a Bolt Boy in. Depending on how you play and how TOs play it, because it's not wholly within terrain for the covered in mud, it's just within. So if you just put one guy, just one guy, just while you're within terrain.
No, it's while you're within cover.
Yeah, so if you just got one, I think if you just got one guy in, it's not receiving the benefits of cover. It's just while you're within.
If I was a TO, I would rule that you have to be receiving the benefits of cover. So you have to be eligible for cover, which would be wholly within the terrain piece.
Yeah, with that in mind, then I would pick a corner with something where I can fit at least one unit of Bolt Boys in, if not two, and somewhere that's not going to block your movement forward. Because the last thing you want is something with a big rock in the way. Terrain does. Sometimes terrain is nothing in this game, but their movement 5 orcs that are small. They're not massive. They're not big wind spirits that can just go anywhere. They're not. They can't teleport, so you have to set up knowing, right, this unit's here. By turn 3, it's going to be there. This is the projection it can bring. But to deploy against KO, anything with Alpha Strike shooting, anything that can teleport, that doesn't have stupid range like Sentinels, pick a corner with terrain that you can fit at least one unit of Bolt Boys and a Shaman or two. Just not the covered in mud doesn't work, but you can get the extra saves. It just sometimes excuse the odds. Then you've picked this corner. You've strung out some goblins all the way over here, so that even if they teleport all the way over here, 9 inches away from your goblins, they're not within their range to shoot your what they call your Bolt Boys. And then that unit of 10 Gut Rippers you put in a big 7 across, 8 across, 1 back, 1 back. You don't care about them dying because they're there so that you can actually play the game. If they kill one and you have to remove half the unit to get back in cohesion, it's fine because it means they haven't killed your army turn 1. So you put them out, string them as far as you can, measure their 9 inches away, and make sure that they're 9 from your Bolt Boys, from your front of your 10 guys, is more than 24 inches away. And that is like, you can do it on almost any deployment. You just have to pick a corner. If you pick a middle, it puts you in a bad spot. You have to unpack quick and fast. You have to first turn run everything. But it's better than losing your army on first turn. So you have to tech that. Right, I'm probably not going to shoot anything first turn. I'm probably just going to score, hold 1, hold more. Because you've got the goblins everywhere. Those Gut Rippers are up forward. The other Gut Rippers are the other side. You score 1, score 2, hold more. You're going to get your battle tactic for everything running because you're going to have to run your entire castle forward. Or run one of your Bolt Boy units, so it's really far up there, so it's projecting a massive 27-inch range. And try put yourself in a position where if you get the turn back, you can really, really, really hurt them with one of your units of Bolt Boys. Take off. Because a unit of Bolt Boys shooting like a Carriage and Overlord's boat, the big one, it kills it. It's only got 18 wounds. You're doing 15 mortal wounds on average. So as soon as you spike, it's dead. Yeah. As soon as you roll that 1 extra 6 on all your dice, it's dead. I've killed it 2 or 3 times playing against it now. But yeah, you have to, because the army is so fragile. Yeah,
screening is key. I think
you have to screen perfectly and screen well. You'll probably lose your first 10 to 15 games if you use this list that I use because you've screened wrong. But as soon as you play those games against those really, really hard matchups, and it'll give you a headache just trying to deploy properly, but then it becomes a really, really good game. And it's the game I like to play.
And that's why the corner is so important. I actually was giving some coaching advice like last week, and I said to them, you just need to practice deployment for like a night. Like sit down and use TTS, use real life, depending on what you've got, and just practice your deployment. Look at your screens, look at your distances, look at, if they had a turn 1 and they deploy on the line, how close would they be? If they come in from reserve, outside of 9, they'd be this much distance between me and my screen, which would then be this much distance between me and my Bolt Boys. So if they had a ranged weapon of 18 inches, could they still hit it or not? and start looking for those things, and where you might want to consider using terrain, looking at some of your different screening options. Could they get in here with a small hero, a large unit? Deployment can often dictate win and losses just right at the start. If you deploy poorly, or if you perfectly counter, what their strategy is, because they're investing a lot of points and resources and effort into a quick strike at the start.
Yeah. This army is a deploy well, deploy right, and it will do exactly what you want it to do.
So maybe the other side of the question then, and we'll wrap things up, is we talked about shooting, right? Screens, looking at distances with your screen so you can push out and reduce as much of that options as possible, or make that charge harder. What about something like, you mentioned Iron Jaws, played Iron Jaws a few times, someone who wants to aggressively get into your face turn one, Vanguard, Blood Knights, like Soulblight, for example, do not have the tools to shoot you from range, so they want to get in your face early. So flip the coin. How do you respond to that with a deployment?
This is where you do the complete opposite. This is where you tech the middle. So you tech the middle. You put in a middle and you do the ogre. You do multiple layers. Well, or the onion, multiple layers.
I was going to say, what is the ogre?
Well, Shrek calls himself an onion or something, doesn't he, on one of the things, because he's multiple layers. So there's something to do with ogres and onions in Shrek. So you do it like an onion, multiple layers. Make sure you're still using and this is where you put. We've talked about like cities putting their Hurricanum in the middle. This is where you put him on a flank. Because you've got the fasten, anything you can draw them into the opposite flank, onto a bad spot away from an objective, because they want to stay away from him. But he's fast enough with fasten to double move and get back into the fight, and you can pull them away from a side you don't want them at. So you can pull them onto a side and be like, well, there's no I've moved up, there's no objective there. My objective's at this side on like a diagonal deployment. I'm going to pull you away from that guy, because anybody who's played against them will know that a Sludge Raker spiking, like I've said a few times, will just kill anything. It just goes mental. It just goes mental. But yeah, you multiple layers. Don't throw away your gut rippers. Don't sneaky them, because anything that can charge a turn one can charge a turn one regardless of where you put your gut rippers. So there's no point throwing them out there. Use them as another layer. Use them like put 20 goblins, 10 gut rippers at either side, another 20 goblins. Like the gut rippers sit on the objective, so that the idea is let them want to fight your army, your bolt boys, off an objective, so they're not one killing your army and two scoring at the same time. So deploying your bolt boys on an objective somewhere is playing to them, because they want to hit you, and they want to hit you on an objective so they can take it off you and score it whilst killing you. So multiple times, like I play with my castle, and my castle will be off an objective to the left of it, to the right of it. So they have to take the decision of kill my army or try to score the objective. My gut rippers hold back and jump onto the objectives and score it, take it back off them. There's not worse than giving your opponent what he wants than giving him even more of what he wants.
And that's the thing, like you want to find those complementary battle tactics and things that allow you to score objective as well as kill your opponent. The minute you start forcing them, well, do you want to kill my unit, and start dropping off victory points from not having the objective or not scoring that battle tactic, and then you are accumulating battle tactics. Yeah, you might kill my army, but ultimately I will win based off the battle tactics and the victory point accumulation. So never forget that. It's not about killing your opponent, it's about scoring your battle tactics, and the killing is second. And sometimes just giving up the kill, retreating from combat, is actually the better option, despite what is obviously very enticing is to kill your opponent.
Yeah.
Any final comments? Like this has been super insightful, especially for an army that I haven't played yet in real life. Hopefully, I get to play it pretty soon. I'd love to see some. I know Joel Graham in my community, who's recently just moved up. I know he's a Kruleboyz player, but he doesn't want to play them yet until they're painted. So I'm keen to see these hit the table. I haven't seen them just yet, but you've got a lot of experience and doing quite well. So obviously, it's only going to grow and get better. And who knows, maybe those Gut Reapers will get that slight adjustment that'll change things a little bit for you.
No, I mean, I've played a lot of games with them now, and I've played a lot of games where we've stopped playing after 2 or 3 turns with them because they are an army that, like I said, if you don't deploy well and deploy right, you will lose games very fast. They're very fragile. There is 150 wounds in the list, in like an average list, not just mine. But they're Gut Rippers with 2 wounds apiece and 5 up saves. Like even the Bolt Boy units is 18 wounds a unit, so it's 36 units between those two. But then we've got a 6 up save. So anything we manage from Ren takes them off. Like anybody who's looking to jump into Kruleboyz and looking to play like this style of army, deployment is the key. Like getting those deployment, knowing your threat ranges, knowing your opponent's threat ranges is the key. Whilst also scoring. I've played a lot of games now where I've absolutely smashed them, tabled them, had all my Bolt Boys. I've played it well. I've had my Bolt Boys alive. My screens are dead, but I've won by 2 or 3 points. Like it doesn't look like that on the table because they've been dead by turn 4 or 5, or sometimes like at War in the Heartlands, I tabled an Ironjaw's army by turn 3, but I still only won 13-7 because all I was doing for the first 3 turns was getting my battle tactic and scoring 1 just for holding 1, and that was it. I was scoring 3 points a turn. He's scoring 5. He runs away with it. And because I didn't get to unpack, just sat there, and I can't push out in the late game. So my one advice would be set up well, then unpack early and unpack fast.
Yeah, because look, when I think about the battle tactics, for example, they're not that easy for you to score. Savage Spearhead, for example, you got no teleports and shenanigans, so that's very difficult for you to score. You don't have a lot of monster killers, so you're not going to be scoring a lot of those bonus, Slay the Warlord, for example. Like, you can kill a monster, but you're not going to be killing a monster, or even what is it that I can't remember what the name of it is. Like, when you're contesting an objective with a monster and they don't have a monster.
You've got to do that early, yeah.
You've got to do that early because you want your Snatcher boss to be with your man bows, and like they might not be sitting on the objective. So I think for you, the objective play is a little bit harder. So again, stick to the mission, keep the focus. It's not as easy, but there's a lot of trial and error, I think, with you guys.
Yeah. It is a list that is an army that is trial, error, repeat. Don't get down on them. And just keep playing them. Like I got down on them real fast because I was playing against Seraphon, triggered again. Daughters of Cain, like literally an Ironjaws. Like with my 3 practice partners have been those 3 armies and KO, and it's just like I'm not getting past turn 2 sometimes. And I just kept persevering and learned that it's deployment. It's nothing else. The army is solid. The damage output is just pointing at something that's got 18 wounds and a 3 up save and just saying take it off. It's just unbelievable. Like it happens every single game. Like I've killed Archaeons in 1 turn with both units with all these buffs on. You take off a Mega Gagan every single turn. You just have to do that deployment right.
Yeah, I'm going to end it with Emma's comment. I like this is a very feel good moment, hopefully, or a whinge fest. I might have opened up Pandora's box. No. But what dream unit would you like to see added in any form of expansion to the Kruleboyz?
Some sort of fast cavalry unit. That's it. Like
light cavalry or like heavy cavalry?
No, just light. Just something that can add to the fact that they don't score well and they need to be out there early. So imagine I can drop a unit of Gut Rippers and put 2 little 5-man. Let's say they're Chaos Marauder Horsemen or like Spider Riders. I played around with looking at Spider Riders because they're fast. They get out there and they stand in the way. But yeah, like something like that. That's what it needs. Doesn't matter if they do 0 damage. they've got a 6-up save and 2 wounds each. But if they can get out there and cause a problem and score early, that's what they need. Something like that.
Crafter Theo just went all ham and said the Mork God Beast. Like far out. Like
something massive. Yeah. What that? I was going for something. I was going for something realistic that I thought we might get.
A lot of people are agreeing with you. You know, things like something like very cavalry, like they are like a warg rider, some type of light cavalry. Nothing very heavy like Varangard or Demigriff Knights. You want something like that is quick, that's durable. It's not durable, like quick,
cheap and fast. Just
like dire
quick.
wolves,
wolves.
Like just something. Yeah, I think that would work quite well. Actually, they're very almost like your own what are they called? Stupid Griffhounds. Like just have like little
just some little thing to get in the way, stand on something, and at the same time, I'd like some like elite, like 3-man, almost trog-like monsters, like swamp dwellers, like something that just literally gets in there and just punches face. Because other than spiking on big monsters, there's nothing that punches really, really hard.
Yeah, I would like maybe less reliant on the mortal wounds and have something a bit more punchy.
Yeah,
like that'd be cool. More swamp monsters. I'm a monster kind of guy, so give me more monsters. Give me some pretty spooky concoctions that you guys, with the help of the Oathbreakers, have concocted in the swamps, and hit with some spooky monsters, because you know your Sloggoths and your Dobies cool. And the big bird, they're all great. So Ellis, this has been awesome. I appreciate it. It's like 1 o'clock for you. You're a mad lad. Anyone you want to shout out and kind of give mad props to, other than like that person that's giving you, PST, with Seraphon?
No, just my local guys, Chris, Will, Jacob. They know who they are. The guys that beat me with all the shooting armies constantly. And then obviously go to thingy if I don't shout out Elysian War Games.
I was going to shout you out. Elysian War Games, you're out at like Leeds, is it? Is that right?
Yeah, it's Wakefield, but it's Leeds area, northeast of England.
So you're in Wakefield Trinity country, not in. I was thinking you're like Leeds Rhino country. You're actually in Trinity.
I live in Leeds. The shops in Pontefract, which is Castleford. So 5 Towns area, literally.
So the Tigers,
the home of rugby. Yeah, it's almost the home of rugby. That like every town has rugby teams. It's literally rugby everywhere up there. Yeah.
Well, if you see Michael Shenton, say hello to me. Like hello. Like I'm sure you have no idea who that is. I'm a massive rugby league fan. I love my English rugby league. The North is the heart of rugby league. Yeah. St. Helens, Leeds, all that good stuff. But Elysian War Games, go check them out. If you want to talk to Ellis, his Twitter handle is below. Send him a tweet. He's just joined the Discord again. I think you were in, now you're out. You're back in.
I cleared my Discord. I was in probably 40 or 50 different Discords, and about 2 or 3 months ago, I just left every single one, and then I've been slowly joining them all back again. I'm back to about 30 again.
It's hard to be active, and it's like the trick is just to pick a few and get good. Get deep in the community, as opposed to you'll find your one wherever it might be. But if people want to talk to Ellis, go to him, hit him on Twitter, hit him on Discord. You're an absolute legend. Thank you so much for sharing Kruleboyz. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you are playing Kruleboyz and if you have a varying opinion, if you are building more around the other factions, if you think that we went over the top with your big yellers, or you've got some Hobgrot techniques that we didn't talk about, because we didn't really rate Hobgrots. No. If you're like some hot grob aficionado and you're like...
Are they in this book?
I don't know. But if you are a hot grot person and you're like, you think I'm wrong, leave me a comment. I'd be curious to hear other people are building, because it's a new book. People are learning. People are trying to find the ways. And I think there's more to this list than just shooters. And you've shown us some interesting builds. I think there are other ones, and I think they need to surface to the top. But Ellis, you are an absolute legend. Thank you for the chat.
No, thanks for having me on. There is a monster build there somewhere.
All right, show us the monster build. Show us your best monster build. Maybe I have to put an incentive around there. Like, show us your monsters.
Get somebody to show. I mean, I've played a lot. There is one. There has to be something there, because there's so many tricks to go with them. It's got to be something there. It's got to be. Maybe it's a rogue idol. I'm gonna try that.
All right, you show us. You show us the
I'll
way.
try that.
Thanks, Ellis. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.